بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today's topic is about misconceptions about violence in Islam, using Quranic references or perspective. We will be dissecting the topic into 7 points. Number 1, is Islam just a collection of rituals or a complete code of life? 2, any compulsion in accepting Islam? 3, what is the concept of power in Islam? 4, when is it allowed to fight? 5, what are the moral aspects of fighting? 6, where are the roots of misconceptions? And 7, the conclusion. My name is Ammar Canani. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace be upon you. Allah shower His mercy and blessings upon you. The first point is Islam just a collection of rituals or a complete code of life? Islam is not only a religion, it's a way of life. And at its heart lies the sacred principles of tolerance and dialogue. And it is also the message of reformation, changing, for individuals and society as a whole. It propagates justice and the truth. As Islam is a complete code of life, teaching covers all aspects of your life. You can say, for example, rituals, social, economical, political, environmental, and any other examples. And one of these aspects, which is the issue of power and war. Point number 2. Is there any compulsion in accepting Islam? As we said before previously, that Islam is the message of reforms. It believes that these intellectual reforms cannot be achieved through power. There is no room for compulsion or forcing anyone to accept the religion. Chapter 2, 256 states, La ikraha fi din. There shall be no compulsion in acceptance of the religion. On the contrary, Islam propagates these reforms through wisdom, fair preaching, good advice, and when you're arguing, you should always be humble and polite, of course, without imposing on anyone. Chapter 16, 125. ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. Invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good advice, and argue with them in a way that is best. Point number 3. What is the concept of power in Islam? Whenever we hear the word power, aggression, hostility, tyranny, invasion comes to our minds. But then power has many definitions and usages. But the one of the Quranic concept, the one in the Quran about power, the meaning is completely different. It is the power of deterrence, which means to discourage others to be hostile or aggressive towards Islam. A very simple example of this is when you see a security dog at a house. The main reason why an owner keeps a security dog at the house is to prevent a robbery, or to make a robber think twice before he approaches your house. But then the dog is not to attack anyone. It's not to be aggressive, but rather it's a prevention. The same goes with the Islamic concept of power. It is rather a prevention and not hostility and aggression measure. Chapter 8, verse 60. وَأَعِدُّوا لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُم مِّن قُوَّةٍ وَمِن رِبَاطِ الْخَيْلِ تُرْهِبُونَ بِهِ عَدُوَّ اللَّهِ وَعَدُوَّكُمْ. And prepare against them whatever you are able of power and steeds of war, by which you may terrify the enemy of Allah and your enemy. The next verse of the Quran emphasizes on the concept of power. After emphasizing on the concept of power, it's actually to incline towards peace. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows power in the Quran as a preventive measure. And the next ayah is the very famous one. Chapter 8, verse 61. وَإِن جَنَحُوا لِلسَّلْمِ فَاجْنَحْ لَهَا. And it means, and if they incline to peace, then incline to it. If peace is an option, it is the fundamental and preferable choice. Point number 4. When is it allowed to fight? As we previously said, that the central idea of Quran is inclination towards peace when possible. But there are certain circumstances where peace is not possible. And there are 4 conditions where fighting has been permissible. Number 1, when Islam is under attack by any enemy. The Quran says, fight those who fight you. Chapter 2, verse 190. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ. Fight in the way of Allah those who fight you. Number 2. When there is persecution, which is hostility and ill treatment, especially because of religious views. In other words, they don't allow the believers to practice their belief. Chapter 2, verse 193. وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةً. Fight them until there is no more fitna or persecution. Number 3. When there is oppression. Chapter 22, verse 39. أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى نَصْرِهِمْ لَقَدِيرٌ. Permission to fight has been given to those who are being fought because they were wronged. And indeed, Allah is competent to give them victory. Number 4 is when there is forced exile upon Muslims without a true justification. Chapter 22, verse 40. الَّذِينَ أُخْرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ بِغَيْرِ حَقٍّ. They are those who have been evicted from their homes without right. Having a more deeper look at it, you will find there always an element of somebody attacking you first, rather than us or Muslims attacking first. Therefore, Islam is about peace. Point number 5. What are the moral aspects of fighting? Although inclination towards peace is the rule, fighting and war are an exceptional choice. Still, as Islam is a divine religion and its teachings are originated from the Almighty Allah, who is the merciful, the most compassionate, and all-loving, there are more divine moral aspects even in war. Although fighting is allowed in the certain condition mentioned before, but number 1, transgression is not allowed, which means going beyond the limits of the purpose of fighting. Example, destroying infrastructures, killing innocent children, women, elders, etc. Because Allah doesn't like the transgressors, as the Quran states. Chapter 2, verse 190. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. Fight in the way of Allah those who fight you. That's the ayah we mentioned before. But do not transgress. Indeed, Allah does not like the transgressors. Number 2, if they cease fighting, peace is the option, because Allah is all forgiving and merciful. Chapter 2, verse 192. فَإِنْ انْتَهَوْا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. And if they cease, then indeed Allah is forgiving and merciful. Likewise, in the coming verse, it is mentioned once they cease the hostility, then peace is the option, because there is no more oppression. Chapter 2, verse 193. وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةٌ وَيَكُونَ الدِّينُ لِلَّهِ. That's the last verse we recited before. But then it states, فَإِنْ انْتَهَوْا فَلَا عُدْوَانَ إِلَّا عَلَى الظَّالِمِينَ. But if they cease, then there is no aggression except against the oppressors. More details about the ethical and moral aspects of war will be provided in the next episode. Point number 6. What are the roots of misconceptions? Unfortunately, the Quran was victimized either because of ignorance or by intentionally, to spread Islamophobia through the mis or narrow interpretation, or distortion, or through selective choices of verses, which is also referred as contextomy, without looking at the general vision and concept of Islam. These things lead to misconception. And the attitude is not just towards the Quran, it's also toward other divine books, such as the Bible or the Torah. They were also victimized by this selective phenomenon. For example of this false propagation of Bible and Torah is number 1, Matthew 10:34. Jesus came not for peace, but a sword. Now this can actually lead to misconceptions. Number 2, Samuel, number 1, the first one, 15:3. About killing and destroying the Amalekites. It actually states, do not spare the old, the young, the infant, the cattle, any other thing available there, destroy everything. And number 3 is dashing Babylonian kids to the rocks, which is found in the Psalms 137:9. The last and final point, the conclusion. Quran propagates peace and love even with the enemies. Chapter 60, verse 7. عَسَى اللَّهُ أَن يَجْعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ عَادَيْتُم مِّنْهُم مَّوَدَّةً وَاللَّهُ قَدِيرٌ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Perhaps Allah will put between you and those whom you have been enemies among them affection. And Allah is competent and Allah is forgiving and merciful. Therefore, enemies and you, affection between each other. The Quran also teaches its followers to treat human beings, whether they are your brothers from faith or even your enemy, as long as they are not fighting you or forcing you to leave your homes, to treat them with dignity, respect, and justice. Allah loves those who are just. Chapter 60, verse 8. لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. Allah does not forbid you from those who do not fight you, and those who do not expel you from your homes, from being righteous toward them and acting justly toward them. Indeed, Allah loves those who act justly. Neither the Quran nor any divine book or divine prophet can propagate violence and cruelty, because they all originate from the same source, which is Allah Almighty, who is Rahman, which means merciful, and Rahim, which means compassionate, and also the absolute love. I hope that answered the question which was in everyone's mind, which is what shapes Islam. Now, after all these 2 videos, I'm sure you agree with me. It is peace, mercy, forgiveness, and love. Thank you all for watching this episode, and thank you for the feedback you provided the last episode. It was really inspiring and motivated me for today's episode, and I hope you enjoyed this show after you watch it. At the same time, this is what Allah wants us. We come from different cultural backgrounds, different nations, different tribes, to come to know each other, treat with respect, tolerance, and dignity. Inshallah, we'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget to follow me on my YouTube, Legendaryace, my Facebook, Ammar Canani, my Twitter @TheOneLegendary, or my Instagram, Legendaryace. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.